Hello, and welcome back to the Point and Left podcast with your hosts,
Skyler
and Kaylynne. Okay, today's episode's a little exciting. Because I don't know what we're talking about, like, at all.
No way.
Because I unfortunately got busy and could not contribute to any research.
I feel very Willy Wonka right now, where I'm like, I'm about to lead you into a world of imagination. Okay, now that you don't have no idea what I'm talking about, you're telling me that I could have just, like, gone off on, like, one of my 8 hyperfixations for 2 hours, and you would have had to stand there and smile and nod. Damn it.
I literally, I have no idea what we are discussing today. You gave me, you told me, like, something very small, but I thought that was just, like, one part of it. Like, that was just, like, an
I managed to make a
introductory
big thing about it.
Oh my god, okay, interesting. Okay, take it away.
Yay. So first, before we get into anything...
sorry, I do have to make a quick disclaimer. Remember last week how Skyler was sick?
Oh my god.
I am now sick.
Right, that's not a disclaimer, that's an out.
So, no.
That's you outing me as a sickness disease machine.
Yeah, if you hear me sniffling in the background, I do apologize. I took a, like, decongestant before this, but that just means that all the snot is, like, melting from the back of my nostrils, so I'll be, like, the whole time. So sorry about that. I did take, like, 4 COVID tests. I've been taking a COVID test, like, every day. And they've all come back negative, so...
Don't make her lie to you. She's just openly weeping. No. I'm going to say everything, and she's going to be like, oh my God. She's constantly crying. You got to look at the YouTube video for that one. Anyway, so... Random disclaimer. One of my favorite things to do, with my friends is, like, basically play BuzzFeed quiz. Like, I'd be like, quick, ask me what American Girl doll you are, and I'll assign it to you, or, like, assign me whatever, and I'll assign it to you. So randomly, my friend Keely and I, shout out Keely, our friend Keely, not my friend Keely. We share Keely.
Keely's under dual custody at the moment.
She has weekends with me, she has weekdays with you. And we drove up and spent some day at a Malibu beach, but we passed by the Getty Villa, which, if you don't know, is a museum made just for Skyler. It's basically like a museum exclusively of ancient Greek and Roman art, architecture, poems, artifacts, whatnot, and it's all made from the excavation of, like, an ancient Roman home that was covered in Pompeii. It's incredible. I spent all day there, and I was also a Percy Jackson kid. So did you ever read Percy Jackson?
Oh yeah. Oh my god, I was deep in that. Logan Lerman.
You were deep in Logan Lerman?
No. No, I was deep into the books.
Lost in Logan Lerman's eyes.
Yeah. No, I do remember watching the first movie and being like, it's not as good as the book. Me at, like, 10 years old.
Literally, that's all that matters. But, okay, if that's the case, then were you ever that kid that, like, read a book and put yourself into, like, the shoes of the main characters ever? Like, did you assign yourself a house?
In Percy Jackson?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't remember, like, anything about them. So
I don't know who this man is.
Literally, I'm like, probably, but I couldn't even tell you a single house.
Good, because I can. So, trying to make, Greek mythology more, tolerable to kids, is they do this whole thing where one of the biggest elements of Greek and Roman mythology is that the gods got around, and that's how you create a lot of demigods, and so all the characters of the book are demigods, so they have at least one godly parent, is what they say.
Oh.
Yeah, is this all coming back to you now?
Well, no, this just makes so much sense with your text, because she texted me and she was like, I'm assigning you your godly parent. And I was like, okay, this could have multiple meanings. And one of the meanings I did think, I was like, oh, what if it's, like, the gods? Like, that would be very cool. I did think about that. But I was also like, maybe just, like, random, like, celebrity, like, godparents, Like
Fairly Godparents?
Yeah,
like celebrity godparents? Next time for sure. I didn't think that far.
But this makes much more sense.
Because I also bought, like, Greek mythology books at the beach, like a dweeb. And then so I signed Keely her godly parent. And so I'm gonna sign you yours.
What are Keely's, can I ask?
Keely is a child of Hermes. Or I'm pretty sure it's Hermes.
Okay.
That's the one god I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Hermes.
Hermes.
No,
It might be.
no, I've heard Hermes before.
Cool. And now,
We're being transported.
so of the 12 Olympians, like I kind of looked in deep to like the character descriptions, motivations, the powers that like children of this god have, and whatever.
This is like your zodiac. Like
that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, you gave me my chart read, and I'm going to give you who your godly parent is based on like your attributes, your fears and whatnot. And
so
shocker
excited.
to no one. I feel like every little girl who read this book is like, oh my god, that one's me.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I bless you as a child of Athena.
Oh my god.
And here's why.
And I do, okay, now it is coming back because
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, we had, I was in the gifted program at my school.
Get in line.
Flex. We are two gifted children.
Ex-gifted children.
No, I had to work so hard because all my friends were in the gifted program and I wasn't for a long time. And I was like, I have to be there. I have to. So I worked really hard to get into it. And I remember I think it had to have been like 4th grade or something, the like gifted program like unit, because they did it by unit where like you could qualify for different units, like there was like a math one, a social study, things like that. And the one that I got accepted into was about Greek mythology, and we read Percy Jackson and like discussed the book, and the teacher like taught us more about Greek mythology. Obviously none of it really retained very well in my mind.
That makes one of us.
But I do remember reading the books and being like, I want to be a child of Athena. Okay.
So all of the gods basically, like, for story purposes, like, Percy Jackson's the son of Poseidon because he like ocean. And for a while I was like, Keely, are you son of Poseidon? But then I'm like, I just don't see any other Poseidon-like attributes given to her. But for you, abilities. I have the like Riordan wiki pulled up. The children of Athena, they possess high intelligence and wisdom, especially considering war strategy. Now that is just like book terms.
Yeah.
Like they're always constantly at war, so they're always gonna have to be like up to snuff, I guess, about like strategy and stuff.
I thought you were gonna say up to no good.
Well, no, they usually are. You're in the same house as Annabeth, the love interest, so congratulations on that.
Yay.
But it just seems like the way that you are such like a logical problem solver and you take things very in the intellectual route, and you always tend to be like, you're always the one that plans things, you're always the one that seems like one step ahead of everybody else. I'm going to read the rest of this. Aside from genius intellect, many of them have instinctive instincts in architecture, forging, and weaving. I don't know if that has to do with anything. Pick up archery, see what happens.
I actually...
Oh, word?
I'm kind of good at archery, yeah.
No way!
No, I am. We had, I haven't fucking done it in, like, years, but we did, like, an archery unit in gym at school. Is that normal? Did you do that?
I think I did, actually, for, like, one day.
And then whenever I was at summer camp, we would do archery, and I wasn't bad.
Are you afraid of spiders? Damn.
It's not like my biggest fear, but like not a fan.
Okay. I have a little trivia, because like most demigod children of Athena have blonde hair and gray eyes, which I'm like squinting. But their fatal flaw is hubris, the source of which is the first lesson of all of Athena's children learn. Quote, "Mom is the best at everything, and that any thought to the contrary is not taken well." So it's like always the need to be the best, always the need to be very stubborn that your way. I don't think you were stubborn or anything, but everyone has a fatal flaw.
Yeah, no, that actually reads me very well. I was thinking about this the other day, guys, therapy moment. Oh. No, I was literally thinking about this the other day, that I definitely do get like jealousy in my soul when people are like better than me at like certain things, and I think that makes me I don't consider myself like a competitive person when it comes to like sports or something, because I know that that's something that like I just don't excel at, but when it's something that I know I excel at and like someone is better than me, I'm like
Your eyes twitch. For the sake of fairness, since I read the books, I clocked myself as a child of Dionysus, just because.
What does that mean?
So, children of like Dionysus is the god of like theater, of like alcohol, of sex, and of madness. So it's basically like sometimes that can be too much. and sometimes they can be very loud and very theatrical and very insane. And my hubris is my need to kind of reel it in and not want to be the center of attention all the time.
I know. I'm like, I will say it's something I'm aware of and I'm working on, guys. don't hate me.
But here's a segue to the main topic. You really thought that was gonna be the whole main topic?
Okay, guys, episode done.
So we were talking earlier about the bad Percy Jackson movies, and you're right, they're bad. But like, I feel really bad about that because honestly, like, it was such like right place, wrong time. Like, wrong. Right Percy, wrong movie. Because like, if they just gotten their head out of their ass, Logan Lerman would have been the perfect Percy Jackson. But just the stars did not align. Yeah. The movies came out when he was 7. It just didn't work. Didn't work. Had they snagged him 10 years earlier, we would have had the greatest, comparable to Harry Potter, but we didn't, unfortunately. But they're remaking it. They're remaking it into a TV show. Yeah. And a lot of people are really, really excited about that. And like, I know like, and a lot of people are like, oh, another familiar IP that's getting, the remake treatment. But like, there are good things that can come from the idea of remakes. But as an overall movie trend, it can feel very exhausting to scroll through Twitter or Deadline and just be like, plot twist, your favorite movie, your favorite TV show from whatever is getting readapted and remade again. And your biggest reaction is like, oh, why? Okay, but why though? Why are we remaking Lilo and Stitch? Why are we getting a CGI reanimation of the Aristocats?
Well, it's like things that are already good. Like, we don't need to remake them. But things that are like, we can do this and we can do it better and we can do it how it should have originally be done. I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
But that's kind of the rant topic that I'm going to go into is the idea of the remake trend.
Oh my god.
Because it's like, I feel like everyone and their mother has said their piece about like why remakes are all bad. But like, I genuinely think that some remakes can be good. And I'm gonna kind of clock on why I feel like this trend has really terrible like effects and overall like trends in media and whatnot. But also I'm gonna go into like some remakes that I think are, dare I say, better than the original, which can be done even now. Because like you were saying, sometimes there is a good reason to remake a movie. Usually it's a movie that they're remaking. It's harder to remake a TV show, but it's done. But just more often it's easier to remake like a 90-minute, hour and a half or like maybe 2-hour movie than an entire like limited series. Sometimes what was once a movie turns into a TV show like Teen Wolf. Sometimes what was once a TV show turns into a movie like It. But like was a book. But you know what I mean? They know what I mean. And like maybe there are good reasons to remake things. Like there is, like maybe there's a new twist that the creators can put on the material that makes it darker, goes somewhere different, goes deeper into like themes and characters that the original just didn't have time to get into. Or maybe there's like a message in the original that could like resonate more with modern audiences. Or maybe like the cinematographer or the special effects artist can see the potential in the material that the original just couldn't account for due to like the time period it was made in or like budgetary reasons or whatever. Like
it's like sometimes the technology just simply wasn't around to like be able to achieve what should have been, what would have been a better adaptation.
And then like modern day like puppeteers and special effects artists and CGI artists can be like, oh, like we can take that to the next level and do what we think they were trying to do, and with more technology at our disposal at the time. And those remakes, when those types of remakes are done, they're remembered very fondly. They're like very praised in nerd circles, and good thumbs up all around. But for a large majority of remakes these days, or at least this is how it feels like to the average consumer, it feels like they're trying to do the cheap thing where it's like capitalizing on your nostalgia. It's banking on having that guaranteed audience instead of gambling on a new idea that might not work. It's stirring up outrage for clicks and online engagement, and it's streaming service fodder so they can pump up their library to compete with streaming wars. They may not think it's going to be a good movie, but it's a movie because, Paramount Plus needs to be on par with Netflix, and they just kind of need to shit movies out in order to just be like, look at our catalog. We have hundreds of things that you don't watch. Subscribe to Paramount Plus. It just all just like reeks of wasted product, which can especially sting if they're announcing that they're remaking a movie you care about, where it's like there's no guarantee that they'll treat that with any sort of respect. I'm only excited for Percy Jackson because the creator himself is like all over it. He hates the movies just as much as we all do, and he's personally like has his little fingers in like everything from like the writing to the casting to the editing to the directing to everything. Like Rick is all over this, but you cannot say that for like maybe movies that are like the director either doesn't give a shit or is dead or couldn't be bothered to be contacted by the studio because they're not on working terms anymore through to like some sort of cocaine fight in the 80s. They're just not on working terms anymore. Who's to say? business is hard. So here's how it usually goes, right? Studios will announce that they're remaking a beloved movie, but they just don't have the money, or they just don't give the creative team enough time to play around with it, or actually like shop around to find people who will find a justification for why this thing needs to be remade. They just find people willing to do it, and to do it quickly. Like, it'd be different if there was like the screenwriter who was just like such a fan of that original work, was like a nerd about it, and had like a ready-made pitch deck and a Bible selling like this movie needs to be remade and here's how, and you know, you got like a ton of nerds on the production team, all willing to like give it their best shot, because that's when you can get something really passionate. But a lot of times studios don't have the time to find those people. They just need a movie to be made now, and people need money, so it just gets made, and it gets made really quickly. And that's where you get Garbo. Like, it's studios going like, well, nobody's asking for us to remake this very popular and very beloved movie, usually from the 80s or 90s, because that's how old people with money are right now. Yeah. We know they love it, and we also know that if we announce that we're remaking it, they'll make us trending on Twitter, and if we, you know, we'll just give it a tiny budget, so we'll garner outrage viewers and the nostalgic viewers. We'll make our money back, so we'll stay relevant, and then if it's bad, then the director and the actors can like take the fall for it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting. For some reason, that 90s show is like coming to mind.
Oh yeah.
As I feel like that's a good example of a show that they rebooted that frankly did not need to be done. I haven't seen any episodes of that 90s show, so like maybe it is really good. I don't know. But it doesn't look promising, to be completely honest. No. It looks like they're just kind of trying to do that 70s show, but with like a new generation, you know? Yeah. But I think that's an interesting example, because obviously you're getting those nostalgic viewers of like probably the parents of kids who are now that age of like the kids who are in that 90s show. And they're actually, when did that 70s show came out? Like, came out in like the 90s, right? Or the early 2000s?
I think it was early 2000s. Oh shit.
I don't know. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the early 2000s.
But I'm like, you're getting those nostalgic viewers, but then you're also attracting a new audience, because the way, at least it's being advertised, it seems like they're targeting teenagers, definitely.
Yeah.
So you're getting like those new viewers from the new generation, but then you're also getting those nostalgia viewers who are interested in it as well. But again, I don't know if like that was something that had to be remade. I feel like kind of a good example of a remake that I can think of, and honestly this is another show that I have not seen any episodes of, but the Doogie Kamealoha MD, the new Disney like basically remake of the Doogie Howser show. I watched the trailer for it, and like it actually looks really good. Like they're doing it in a way where like it's there's like romance. The visuals are much more interesting than like the original show, and then obviously they're adding like diversity to a story that like originally didn't have any, but they're still taking the original idea of like a, you know, a doctor like protege who's like, you know, a teenager. But it I don't know. I'm gonna have you watch the trailer maybe after, because it literally it made me like it made me want to watch it, and I was like, wait, like this might be good, because I remember seeing billboards of it, and I was like, oh god, like another fucking reboot, like do we really need this? But then I watched the trailer and I was like, wait, like this looks kind of good.
I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because like one of the big reasons that a lot of companies say they're rebooting movies and TV shows is because they want to push for like larger diversity in films, which I need to say right now is a good thing. I am not about to bash these movies and TV shows for being diverse. If anything, that's the main reason I actually usually don't mind them. It's like, yes, do POC and like LGBTQ plus people and those with disabilities deserve better things? Yeah. Would I rather the diversity come from a genuine place of representation and a need to see these characters on screen rather than being used as a marketing gimmick to stir up controversy? Yes. But more diverse movies is overall a net positive, and I'm not about to like pry that away from people. So like as we go forward in this episode, my big statement is good, enthusiastic thumbs up, more diversity in movies and TV shows, please. But so I'm just gonna use Disney as an example because I'm more familiar with them, like Disney adult, but I can't help but feel like Disney is using the diversity element to protect them from backlash. Like, the Little Mermaid movie that's coming out this year, I'm not really excited for that. Like, I think the coloring and the special effects for, like, the underwater world look kind of bad. Like, the character design for, like, the fish, like, Flounder and Sebastian look bad. Yeah, like, I'm not looking forward to the new, like, Little Mermaid movie. And also, I was never a fan of the Little Mermaid story as a kid, even anyway. But, like, I'll say, like, hey, I'm not looking forward to, like, the new Little Mermaid movie coming out this year, and people will be like, yeah, I agree, Ariel should never be black. Like, okay, no.
You're like, that's not what I said.
You're not affiliated with me! Like, Halle Bailey's voice is the only thing I'm looking forward to in that entire movie. Like, her voice in the trailer sounds ethereal and lovely, and she's beautiful, and I'm sure she'll do a very good job. Like, that is absolutely not why I'm upset. That is not the problem. Or, like, I'll go, the Lilo and Stitch remake looks like a giant disaster just waiting to happen. They haven't announced what Stitch will look like. I know, like, a couple of fan artists have tried their best to, like, recreate what they think a CGI Stitch will look like. There's some things work better in 2D, like that scene in Lilo and Stitch where, like, Stitch is, like, has an alien, so he has, like, 6 arms, and he's trying to blend in and be a dog, so he, like, shoves 2 of his arms back in his body. You watch it as a drawing, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Imagine that, if you will.
Yeah, I feel like that's gonna be horrifying.
And, like, people are like, it kind of looks like an alien, but kind of a koala, but kind of a dog. And then you see this, like, drawing, and you're like, yeah, sure. What CGI artist is gonna have, and they're not gonna have the time or the money to make it actually look good. It might, unless they go the Detective Pikachu route of just making it look like a fuzzy little animated thing, it might look bad, horrifying. But I say that, and people are like, yeah, I know, like, another story fault. I'm like, no, I don't care. I'm glad that they cast a little Hawaiian girl. That's not the point. That's not the problem. Or I'll be like, I didn't really like the live action Beauty and the Beast, and, you know, incels on YouTube nod along and, like, send me a link to their hours-long ranting video about how Emma Watson's feminism ruined cinema. It's like, no, stupid, wrong, bad. Like, you're not affiliated with me. I hate hating movies that evil people also don't like. Or, like, I don't like The Last Jedi, and people are like, yeah, I know. I hate that there was a black man and an Asian woman in it. And you're like, can you just die for 2 seconds? Like, you're not affiliated with me. I hate sharing a side with bad people. And because, like, we hate things for different reasons. I don't like the movie because I didn't like the movie. You don't like the movie because you're racist. We are not the same. And it just feels like Disney puts this, like, awesome, like, you know, diverse coding that, like, should be in everything. They put it around all their remakes in hopes that people don't get mad, and also hoping that the right people do get mad, so then they can use these remakes to garner, you know, like, clicks, social clout. They make $1 billion, and then the movies just, like, die off in the middle of, like, a Disney Plus graveyard. And, like, I get that this kind of diversity can come off as, like, hollow, shallow, self-congratulatory if it's done wrong, but it's just, like, if this just means better representation, it's not, like, the worst thing in the world. But, like, putting my conspiracy goggles on, part of me is, like, convinced that they actually do this shit on purpose. Like, people have, like, begged giant companies like Disney to, like, be more diverse, to tell a broader spectrum of stories, so that, like, and then the reaction is to make these half-assed movies, slap some diversity in, and when the movie does poorly and gets bad reviews, they can be like, oh, see, the numbers say audiences don't like diverse leads, they just aren't resonating with audiences, so we're just gonna, like, nix that program and make the big movies with not those things. Is that good with everybody? Is that good? And it also makes, like, racist assholes on Twitter feel justified in calling everything with, like, a black person in it woke, and, like, seeing any representation as bad and pandering no matter what it is, and convincing, like, the average people that these remakes are bad because they're diverse, not because they're just poorly written with a low budget, where it's like they're directing the anger on the only good parts of these remakes, not everything else about it, and it's so frustrating.
Well, and I was also thinking, I'm, like, such a... Listen, there is a time and a place for IP. Like, I think that there are plenty of TV shows and movies and things that have successfully been adapted from IP. But there is, unfortunately, I think, because of the big boom of streamers, and because there are now so many more projects. So, like, obviously big studio money can only be spread so thin. Yeah. So it's like, if you're trying to make, you know, like 300 projects in 1 year, all of those projects are going to get less money than if you were to make, like, I don't know, 40 well-made, well-crafted, creative projects, but that's not the priority.
And, like, as an animation girly, I don't know why I said animation like that. As an animation, as an animation, like, a girly, the Disney live-action remakes piss me off in a very specific way. Like, I'm going to quote a tweet here because, like, they said it better than I could. It says, like, the Disney live-action remakes have such vicious contempt for animation. They treat these gorgeous works of art as outdated first drafts that need to be patched up with Vanity Fair, like, photo shoot aesthetics. And, like, yeah. Like, nothing was wrong with these movies. And, like, fine, nothing has to be wrong with a movie for you to, like, want to update it, remake it, whatever. Sometimes it just needs an update, or the creative team can take the stories in a new direction. But specifically with the Disney live-action remakes, they don't want to change the story at all, because then, like, how will you gather those nostalgic movie viewers and their kids to go buy tickets or, like, get a Disney Plus account to see it again? And they can't imply that the old stories are in any way inferior to, like, the new product, because, one, they're not. They can't lie. Two, because they're still capitalizing off of them. You can't be like, the new and improved Cinderella, but also buy merch of the old Cinderella, now available at Disney.com for $993,000 McBillion. And also, on my little soapbox, animation, like 2D animation specifically, is the art form that holds up the most. Like, CG animation, a lot of times, like, that is getting updated as technology advances. Like, where we are from where we first animated the first Toy Story to where we are when we animated Toy Story 4, leagues different. Enough so that enough people are wanting them to, like, remaster the first one with, like, more of an updated animation style. Not much else, but just, like, the animation style. And, CG can be really cool, but, like, we're getting there, right? But 2D animation will look good 100 years from now. It is the art form that holds up the most because, like, we nailed it out of the gate. It's like making a pencil move smoothly. Well, it looked like Snow White looks just as good of a movie as it did in the 30s as it does right now. Just the story, pacing hold up probably to, like, your average cool hip new youth, probably not, but it looks fine. But you watch, like, Dinosaur, that movie that came out in 2000, and it looks like dog shit because that's what they had at their disposal at the time. And it just seems like, especially with the Disney live action remakes, and then they, like, don't have enough money to make the CGI even look good enough. It's like, well, now you've made them worse. Yeah. It's like, what looks better? Aladdin, that came out in the 90s, that literally is fine. Like, you could put that on and it could have been made yesterday. It could be made, like, 50 years from now. Or the live action remake with the genie looks like the genie and the Will Smith and it looks like the Thing, and it doesn't look good because you didn't give it enough budget to make it look good. It's like the same why people are like, how come Iron Man, like, the first Iron Man movie looks so good and, like, She-Hulk looks so bad? And it's like, let's think. Why does one movie that an entire studio took an entire year to work on look better than a studio now that makes 8 movies and 15 TV shows and gives the budget of one movie and also get it done in, like, 3 days? Of course it's going to look bad. I
have a question for you. I don't know if you'll know off the top of your head, but I know obviously, like, there's still a lot of, like, TV shows being made that are still 2D animation. Are there, like, movies being made that are 2D animation, or is it predominantly, like, 3D animation now?
It is okay. I do know this off the top of my head. So a lot of 2D animation still thrives typically in TV shows because that can be animated on Flash. It's just kind of like it's a quicker animation program that basically you draw a base and then you, like, control the limbs like puppets. And it's just kind of like a cheaper way to do it, like, hand-drawn everything.
Well, it's very, like, like morning cartoons.
Exactly.
Like, I feel like it has that element to it as
well. It's bouncier. The designs can look more fun because you don't have to redraw it over and over again. It's just, like, they just move the puppet. Makes sense. Like, the really bad example of Flash is, like, Johnny Test was Flash. Oh. Every time they moved, like, they blinked, it would be the whip sound to make sure kids are awake. But no, the last Disney 2D animated film was Winnie the Pooh.
I'm sorry. I'm shocked because you remember that I've asked you the most random fucking question and you're just like, oh, actually no, I do know. In 2006 on May 31st.
No, because that was like another reason why I really wish Princess, not the first one, but, like, that new one that they did, which is why I really, really wanted the Princess and the Frog to be better, is because, like, they wanted, like, look, we're adding another princess, like, we haven't done this, like, in a while, guys, like, and they wanted to make it fit within, like, the whole, like, canon of the princess line, and so that was, like, one of the last gasps of hand-drawn 2D animation by the Disney company, and it flopped. And then they're like, all right, so what if we start doing our princesses in CGI, starting with Tangled in, I think, 2010. And so since then, Disney at least has stopped doing 2D animated movie, because they're like, there's just no money in it. Like, it's just way more expensive, and, you know, we'd rather kids want to look at CGI anyway.
It's more expensive to do 2D?
Yes.
How so?
Because oh my gosh, yay. Yeah. If you really, because it's one of the hardest, you have to pay your animators very well. So not to say that like CGI movies are inexpensive to make, they absolutely are not. Like, they still obviously require, you know, a lot of like care and expertise. And, you know, especially if you like Disney, in every movie you want to push like some sort of technical element. Like for Brave, they wanted to reinvent how hair moved, because they were just so like really wanting to, you know, make Merida's hair look as good and bouncy and different coils as they could possibly be. For Frozen, they invented a new way they animated snow, and like they animated it so well that now it's used in like crime scene replications of like how snow falls and like the dynamics of snow falling. They like bought that whole program from Disney because they did it so well. So like every CG movie that Disney does, they try to like push the envelope in some sort of way. So like, not to say that CG movies are like cheap as fuck to make, like they're still not, but so most of the more detail animated work for Disney movies comes with like making the puppets themselves, like making sure all the textures are right, all the textures of like the clothes, the hair, the skin, the glasses, the details, whatever. And once you get that down, you send it over to the animators, who then like point and click and like make this eyeball go like this way and then this way. They're not redoing the CGI model every time. They're just taking the CGI models and putting them in the scene and manipulating them through like technical programs. Sometimes you can put in like an algorithm, the computer will smooth it out for you, but like, not to say the computer is animating for you, but they can kind of help, you know, through like algorithms and other forms of like, you know, computer programs that I'm so not in the realm of figuring out what to do.
Just to clarify for people who don't for people who don't know as much about animation, I'm assuming from context clues that the puppet is just like the original drawing that is then like manipulated to move in whatever way, or like the base model, basically.
The model, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, CGI, a lot of the work just goes in like character designing the model, making sure like the sphere now looks like, you know, Mirabelle, you know, like it's just the tiny little details and making them move and whatever. And then once you got the models down, then it's just like manipulating them in the scene. But 2D animation doesn't work like that. Every single frame has to be drawn in, every line has to be drawn in by hand, and you have to make sure that each line, especially like the traditional 2D animation before everything was digitized, it all had to like flow together in like so like, you know, you had frame 1, frame 2, and then you had to do like frame 3 and 4 to make sure that that line and that line meet together in the middle in a smooth way. So it requires way more expertise, way more attention to detail. In the 70s, kind of Disney adopted like a sketchier style. So like if you watch like some Winnie the Pooh, Robin Hood, the Aristocats, it's way more of like a sketchiness to try to like, you know, kind of blend those two together, because they were running out of money. And they couldn't really afford to be that hyper precise with, you know, where the line density was, and they kind of wanted to have fun with it. But 2D animation is just so much more time intensive, because everything has to be done by hand, by pencil, and then inked, and then
wait, so there's no way to like get a like digitized version of what appears to be like 2D?
And that's why Spider-Verse like changed the game, is because like so basically Disney and DreamWorks and Sony, but mostly Disney is like kind of like the forefront, like they created the trend. And so their trend was like, once you get that model down, that's like kind of you can kind of move it however you want. And so now like a lot of movies kind of have the same like Disney aesthetic. And Sony was like, what if we combine the attributes of 2D and 3D animation into one product? And so what Spider-Verse did is they tried to mold those two. So for Spider-Verse, it's just also fascinating. They did 3D models of like the base models of general like shapes and whatever, and then they animated that. And then they went back in and hand drew on top of their base models, on top of the footage, the tiny details, like the outlines, and like,
that's so cool.
Trying to like make it look like a movie that has never been done before, which is why like when Spider-Verse released, people were like, I've never seen anything that looks this good before. And hopefully Spider-Verse will last the test of time forever, just because it's like innovative, and you know, I want people to treat Spider-Verse the same way they treated Toy Story. Being like, because Toy Story was the first CGI animated movie ever, and people were like, I didn't know movies could look like this. And then, you know, Shrek came out, and people were like, I didn't know animated movies could look this good. The CGI animated movies could look this good.
Oh, wow. Okay, I have one last animation question for you.
And I have billions of answers.
So what style is the new, like, Puss in Boots movie?
Puss in Boots movie is a little bit, people called it like the Spider-Versification of DreamWorks because it is CGI, but they're adopting way more of that like cartoonish style.
Sketchy look. Okay.
Yeah, so it's still CGI. It's still done with, you know, on Maya using 3D models, but it's way more of like a choppy frame rate to try to make it look a little different, not so smooth. You know, definitely like lines on top of it, making the animation super expressive, super clean. But yeah, so I think right now for 2D animation, you really have to look at more, all the bigger studios kind of have veered away from it. I don't think DreamWorks hasn't done 2D in a long time. I think once Shrek came out, that was the end of it. For them, and I think Sony's been like dabbling in it, but it's been CGI for a very long time. And so if you want 2D animation, you go to like indie animation companies like Cartoon Saloon. They do a lot. Check them out; they're really cool. They do a lot of 2D animation stuff. It looks really neat. And like occasionally, like Disney will do like a short that's 2D animated for like their, you know, maybe the beginning of their movies and whatever. But typically, it's the end of that. And it's just so infuriating that, like, in one fell swoop, Disney closed down their 2D animation department for, like, theatrical releases. And then started remaking all of their 2D movies. Like, the 2D movies, there was something wrong with them. And, like, yeah. So, it's just, for a lot of these Disney live-action remakes, a lot of the times for the stories that are most beloved, it's a beat-for-beat retelling. The only difference is the switch from, from cartoon to either live action or CGI hybrid, as if the animation was the thing that was holding it back from being a good movie, which, fuck you. There's no way that that's true.
I think that's what I was trying to express earlier. I feel like I expressed it poorly, but like that is my issue with so many of the remakes, is that it's not really transformative in any meaningful way other than, you're right, changing the animation. And it's like, there was nothing wrong with it. Like, what do you mean? Like, if you're going to keep the story the same, if you're going to keep all of the fucking dialogue the same, all of the songs the same, like, what is the point of the remake, other than, like, an obvious cash grab?
Yeah, it's like The Lion King, where it's like, okay, well, you didn't change anything. It just now looks different. In my opinion, looks worse. Like, yeah, it's impressive that it kind of looks real, but then they start talking, defeating the entire point of the hyper-realism aesthetic that you're going for. And the songs are a little worse because, you know what I mean? It's just changing the whatever. At least when, you know, you adapt Disney movies to the stage, you're allowed to change a couple things. The costumes are a little different. You add some songs. Stylistically, you change the format because the medium itself is changing. So instead of telling it through a movie, you're telling it on the stage. Or like same thing of like you were going to, you know, write Aladdin into a book. Like the medium changes, therefore you can adapt to the medium. But the medium is like for the remakes, it's movie to movie. So you're telling the same language. You're just swapping out aesthetics that I think were better before. And that's where I shake my fist and scream. All of that being said, all this negativity, I actually have a couple, and so it's so easy for you to be like, so remakes are bad. Every time they're like, congratulations, we're remaking a movie that you love, your first instinct to be like, fuck you. No, nothing's wrong with it. And a lot of the remakes that I have noticed are good are kind of old. Like, I think a couple, and even two of these where I'm like, this is a good remake. They then remade it again recently because they're like, so nice, let's do it twice. But this first example that I'm going to say is like the most recent example that I can think of, and that's West Side Story. So the original West Side Story movie, it was a musical, but then, movie in 1961, they remade it in 2021. And just for the existence of the new West Side Story has no brown face. Yay! Yay, no brown face, yay! And, like, for me, and, I could just go on a whole other podcast about why I think West Side Story, the new one, is better than the old one. And I don't even really like West Side Story that much. I think that helps. Like, I think West Side Story fundamentally is kind of broken. And I'm sure I've said this to you already, Kaylynne, but, like, it's loosely adapted, not loosely. It's very adapted from Romeo and Juliet. And the point of Romeo and Juliet is it's like two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene. It's just like these two families are about on equal footing. They've been feuding for a while, and now love can't blossom. And then like, obviously Romeo and Juliet die. Spoilers. And then it's just like the two families look at each other and like, we're not so different, you and I. Like, I can't tell who Montague is and where Capulet begins. We're all even at the end of the day. And then West Side Story is like, I'm a white supremacist, and you all are immigrants. And you're like, well, so I want the Sharks to win.
Yeah.
And the movie's like, no, what about the Jets? And I'm like, I hate the Jets. And then the Jets try to rape someone. I'm like, I hate the Jets. I don't like the Jets. When you're a jet all the way from my fist to your face and the bullet in your brain. But when they remade West Side Story, like, they weren't remaking it just because they're like, oh, people like West Side Story. Spielberg made this, like, a visual masterpiece. He took a lot of care and effort into, like, revitalizing the visuals, the music, trying to keep the story fresh as much as he could. There's so much about West Side Story that, like, no matter what you do, probably ain't gonna work for a modern audience. But darn it, Steven tried. If only Ansel Elgort was anyone else.
Oh, no.
Like, maybe someone with talent.
Sorry.
That's a good one.
That was my laugh.
But that was a good one. Because he knew that, like, West Side Story was such a important movie for, like, film history that he couldn't just cash it. He couldn't just, like, throw in the towel and just, like, make it just to make it. He had to put his whole, like, Spielbussy into it. And I think he did.
At least, like, you know, like, if Spielberg's gonna make a movie, like, he has dignity, you know? Like, he has class.
And, like, not to say that some Spielberg movies weren't a little half-assed, but this one was not. Yeah. He definitely went all out. Another good remake, Freaky Friday. The original one was 1976. This was another one where, like, I have to specify it's the 2003 remake, because then they remade it again in 2018 as a musical for some reason, and it's bad. So... yeah, the Freaky Friday 2013, iconic, a wonderful performance.
2003.
Yes, what did I say?
2013.
Correct. 2003. You're like, there's a fourth one? Yeah, 2003. Like, for idea of, like, a body swapping, like, we've all seen, like, episodes of the Disney Channel where they're, like, body swapping, and it's just, like, the most cliched thing ever, where you're just like, okay, I don't believe you. You're just, like, you're doing the cheap thing. But, like, Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis, they're like, no, I'm not going to half-ass this. You believe that Lindsay Lohan is suddenly, like, a woman in her 40s, and Jamie Lee Curtis is a teenager. No,
they did good. I mean, okay, if you're casting Jamie Lee, like, Disney knew what they were doing. They were like, no, this one's gonna be different. Have you? I honestly, I have not seen the original, nor have I seen the 2018 one. I've only seen the 2003, and I was actually going to ask, do you think part of the reason why you believe it is such a successful or like a successfully remade film is nostalgia?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. And I'm enough to announce that.
Aware, yeah.
Yeah, and, like, honestly, when they said that they were, you know, remaking Freaky Friday again, a lot of people were like, no, like, it's not going to be. I'm like, first of all, good. The original 1976, do you know how they swap bodies?
No, I literally know nothing.
They both, it's like, it's still a mother and a daughter. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, she doesn't understand me. They just literally go, if only she could be in my place for one day. The music goes, and then it's like, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Lights flash, and then they're switching the same bodies. Oh. The 2003 movie made it apparent that it was scary Chinese ancient magic. Yeah. So they're like, we're remaking Freaky Friday. I was like, good.
They did maybe fail in that regard.
It's a little bit racist, but like fine, if you're gonna remake it, like, let's hear it, you know. And it's, you know, that, like, really awful, like, subplot in the 2003 Freaky Friday where, like, the boyfriend has a weird crush on the mom, and you're just like, I wish you wouldn't. Oh, I wish they wouldn't do this. The musical in 2018, the mom is like, isn't this weird? I'm suddenly having crushes on teenage boys. My hormones, I don't have any control over them. Isn't this crazy? And you're like, you made it worse.
I was actually going to say, like, one of my favorite plot points, I was going to say the original, not even the original, the 2003, and the 2003, Freaky Friday is is the plot where like he's in love with the mom, just because I think it's so funny, and he's just so like, he is committed. He's like, oh, your mom is so cool, and he's like, hot. I love you. What's that song that he sings where he's like,
oh god,
I don't know, he sings some song to her and she's like, shut up. But then it's like, I don't know, it's like kind of sweet in a way, because you're like, but he loves her for like her personality, and she's actually the girl.
Yeah,
but it is a little weird. No,
it is a little weird, because like, especially
I'm
like,
pretty sure
they never explain it to him, because for his whole life he's just gonna go on thinking that for like a week he had a crush on her mom, or like at least 2 days. I don't know how long they're in each other's bodies.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
at least they don't ever imply that like Jamie Lee Curtis in Lindsay Lohan's body is suddenly having crushes on teenage boys also, because she suddenly has the body of a teenager.
Yeah, that's a weird.
Didn't need that.
That's a weird distinction
you.
to make.
No, thank you. One of my favorite movies of all time, The Birdcage, was a remake of a little French movie, La Cage à Folie, from 1979. And that's another good, like, a lot of times, like, American remakes of foreign films are bad.
Yeah.
Like, there's oh my god, I can't think of the title right now, but I need you and Taylor specifically to watch it, because I've described it to her enough times that, like, I know she's obsessed with it. So there's this French movie about this angel that, like, you know, is basically an angel of death, right? And he, like, he just drags souls, like, at the end of their time, and, like, gently lifts them up to heaven. And then he decides that he wants to be human, so he gives up immortality, because he like falls in love with like humanity and our flaws and our faults and whatever. And they're like, cool, so let's remake this into an English movie, and it's just like an angel who's like, I don't want to be an angel anymore because I fell in love with Meg Ryan. And so he gives up his angelic hood so he can have sex. And that angel is Nick Cage.
No.
And in the script, there's these lines that Meg Ryan has to say where she's like, because he's supposed to be like an otherworldly, like, angelic beauty, that she's like, something's off about you.
City of Angels. Oh, I've seen this poster. I've never seen this. Okay, this is another, we're putting this trailer on the list of trailers to watch.
Where she's just like, you're just so beautiful. And she's talking to Nick Cage. And like, not that Nick Cage isn't like iconic in his own right, but like, I wouldn't look at Nick Cage and be like, there's something so alluring about your face. He's supposed to be as alluring as like the Twilight people are in Twilight, where they're like, you're so attractive that you almost look weird. Nick Cage is like, I'm Nick Cage. They're having sex in the movie, and she's like, how do you feel? And he goes, warm. But in the Birdcage's case, it's a really amazing, awesome, perfect remake of the exact same concept, but in American instead of French. Little Women 2019 specifically, because this has been remade
so many times.
In 1918, 1933, 1949, 1994, and then 2018, and then 2019.
Yeah. I have yet to see
what?
The 2019 Little Women. I haven't seen it. I know.
How much shit are we gonna have to add to the queue, Kaylynne?
We just need an ongoing
But like,
list.
are you familiar with the story?
Yeah.
Okay. So, for a quick little whatever. So, I'm not like a Little Women expert by all means, but one of my favorite little fun facts about Little Women is that it was, so Louisa May Alcott wrote it, and she kind of like published it chapter by chapter in this magazine. And as she was releasing chapters, she got like fan mail, and like, you know how teenage girls are going to be teenage girls since the beginning of time. And so she kept getting letters from teenage fans being like, oh my god, like Jo and Laurie have to get together. And she was like, Louisa herself, heavily rumored to have been a lesbian, and Jo was basically her self-insert character. So she saw a lot of herself in Jo, and so she was basically like, I don't see Jo ever getting married, actually. Like, she was very stanchion, firm in her belief in that. And then she kept getting an overwhelming amount of fan mail being like, if Jo and Laurie don't end up, the story sucks and I hate you, and like, this story is all worthless if my OTP doesn't get together. And then out of spite, she was like, fine, fuck you all. I'm going to make Laurie marry the sister you all hate. And then she's like, and Jo marries this old guy. Ha ha! Like, this old man who, like, I just introduced on a whim. Yeah. And then the story's over. Don't tell me what to do with my story. And then...
That's iconic.
It is. But then, that's the book. Mm-hmm. And now you have the problem of adaptation of like, okay, fuck, well, we can't change that. We now know that Laurie and Amy end up together, but we can't deny the Laurie and Joe friendship and deep, love that they have for each other
The
either.
chemistry,
So so it's been a challenge of adaptations for them to be like, how do we make that go down easier? Do we like make it as a tragedy that Joe and Lori don't end up together? Do we just say it as it is? But 2019 Little Women does like the best interpretation that I have seen of convincing me that Joe and Lori would never have worked and that Lori belongs with Amy. And I cannot say that about any other adaptation ever. Does it help that Amy's played by Florence Pugh? Yes. It does. But yeah, it's just like that, aside from the amazing cinematography and like the way that she like breathes life into these characters in a way, like they've become so relatable to me, and how they describe like womanhood and how like lonely it can feel, but also like the embarrassment of feeling lonely, because why are you lonely? You have your friends and your sisters, but they're all growing up without you, and you're clinging on to this sense of like idyllic childhood wonder, but childhood is over. Yeah, all of that is already makes it like one of my favorite adaptations, but then they added the extra like work into making the story that was designed to be a giant middle finger at her viewers from Louisa May Alcott into an actual believable, correct way the story could have gone, which was hard. So that's a good remake, everyone. The It movies, it was obviously like a book written by Stephen King, and then it turned into a miniseries with Tim Curry as Pennywise in the 90s. In 1990, it was a little miniseries. The budget was no.
Why did I think that was like a movie? I didn't realize it was a miniseries.
Yeah.
Because I've seen like stills from it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched it, obviously.
It's not very
I
good.
would know it was a miniseries.
It's not good. Because it has no money.
Yeah.
You know? And then they remade them into... I don't love the It Chapter 2, the one that came out in 2019, but I love It Chapter 1 that came out in 2017. I don't like horror movies. I like that movie.
I was gonna say, that was like the first movie. I remember I was in high school and I went with my friends, and they like had to convince me to go, because I like do not do well with horror, or at least during the time I really did not do well with horror. Like I would cry. I would literally cry and like have nightmares. Like I just did not handle it well. And I remember that was kind of the first movie that I watched that I was like, oh my, you know what? Like, I can watch scary movies. Like, it was, because it had levity throughout it. It was very funny. But, like, it still was a little spooky.
It's endearing. Yeah. Like, because horror movies, I never give a shit about these people that the bad things are happening to. And, like, that's the fun part of horror movies, is you're like, yeah, I want to see, like, gross things. And I can't get attached to these characters. But, I got attached to basically, like, Stand By Me, but with a killer clown. I'm like, no, not the youths. I like these youths. So that's a good one too. Another one I have to specify, another good remake is The Mummy, but the one in 1999, not the remake of the remake that happened in 2016 with Tom Cruise, 2017. The 1999 one was a remake of the 1932.
With Brendan Fraser. That's another one I have not seen, that one. But I also haven't seen the Tom Cruise one, so.
No, that's okay. You can watch the 1999 Mummy. You just have to be aware that it's gonna awaken something in you, and there's kind of you have no choice. It makes you bisexual.
Awaken you like a mummy awakens from the tomb. Okay.
That was a really good one, Kaylynne.
That was actually so bad. That was horrible. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was basically the end of that. It's like, there are good remakes. Like, sometimes, like we said, the original can use fresh eyes. Like, what if there's a movie that, like, the message is really good, but, like, they just don't use great language, or the acting is just really, really bad, or the special effects are dog shit. You want someone to be like, oh, finally, to see the potential. Like, I know, shout out Lawson, although he's not listening to these. There was Tron. He keeps being like, there's so much potential in the world of Tron, but like, and so I keep wanting it to be remade, because so far, like, no one's just been using Tron to what it could be. Like, people just keep ignoring for like all the potential it has, and keeps dropping the ball. So he keeps looking forward to every time Tron is remade into something else. And I have a quote actually from the creator, because the Rachel Shakert was the creator of the Babysitter's Club reboot for Netflix, based on the series of books, was a Netflix television show. She says, I think female audiences are trained to not take their own stories as seriously. Stuff men were obsessed with when they were 9 is treated like Hamlet. How many Spider-Man movies are there? How many Star Wars? They tell it over and over again from different perspectives. That's all fine, obviously, but what if someone treated something for girls that seriously, even with a fraction of the money? And, like, that makes me think, too, that sometimes, like, the franchises that we loved when we were little girls aren't super taken that seriously. And, you know, when little boys like something, it's treated like the sacred texts. And obviously, like, there's just, like, boy media, girl media, obviously. But you know what I'm saying, you know? Yeah. Like, we're getting another reboot of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I'm excited about because it looks really cool. And the teenagers are voiced by, like, actual, like, teenage boys. So their voices are all squeaky, and it's really fun. But still. So, like, maybe even more remakes could be done of, like, actually taking, like, properties that we were obsessed with when we were younger and taking them under, like, an even more, like, academic scrutiny, fan base, closer eye. So I'm not, like, against remakes in general, but I resent this idea that movies that are 20 years or older just exit the public's memory, and the only way to keep these movies alive is to remake them over and over again, or else people will just forget about them. Like, with the aesthetics and script getting weaker and weaker seemingly every time, like, movies can just be iconic and stay around without the need to force it back into the present every time some executive feels like they'd like more money. It's like, I don't want to, like, people remember the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's not going anywhere. You don't need to remake the Rocky Horror Picture Show for people to be like, oh my God, I remember that movie. I totally forgot about it. You don't need to remake Citizen Kane. It'll stick around. It'll be iconic enough. And because, like, some people are like, oh my gosh, like, you have to remake it because, like, kids today don't care about it. It's like, well, those movies aren't going anywhere. And if you care about the original ones, just show them the original ones.
I know, like, I watched the original Snow White when I was, like, 6. You think I was around in, like, 1950s or, like, whatever? 30s. Oh, my God, sorry. Oh, my God.
You said, like, but a bead of sweat. You're like, I wasn't around during the 30s. I noticed that your teeth look a little sharper upon closer inspection.
No, I was going to say perhaps a live-action remake that I would look forward to would be Barbie the Princess and the Pauper.
Please, God. Exactly what I'm talking about. That would be the respect it deserves.
That would be honestly really good as a live-action remake. And honestly, I could see them making it like PG-13.
Yeah.
And like intensifying it. And like, I think that's something that I feel like has a lot of potential to like be remade successfully.
Yeah, and I know that, like, the nerd, you know, knee-jerk reaction is to be like, they're ruining my childhood. And, like, yeah, I know I've just basically bitched for an hour straight. The originals aren't going anywhere. Except maybe they are, actually. I shouldn't say that. Because the original, you know, your first instinct to be like, the originals aren't going anywhere. Just because a movie is remade, it doesn't mean that the original one is suddenly stopped existing. Unless it's on a streaming service and where the creator just decides to one day just remove it from the streaming service, therefore completely erasing it from all of existence until you have a physical copy, then maybe the remakes will eradicate the originals. But in most cases, that's not the case.
Amazing.
How did it feel being dragged around by the whims of my brain today?
I loved it. It was really interesting. And I love how you have just so much knowledge about, especially animation and stuff. I don't know. I love that I was able to like ask you questions about stuff and you actually knew the answers, because Lord knows I would be like, let me Google. Let me see. I don't know. No, this was really interesting. That was a good one. Thank you for leading that.
Thank God, otherwise we'd have to remake it.
Guys, watch out, 10 years there's gonna be a live action remake of this podcast.
It's gonna go called Point and Laugh 2.0. Yeah. No, Point and Laugh, a new generation.
Since this was like your episode, do you want to close it out? I feel like I usually close it out.
Oh my gosh, no. Okay, what do I say? Like,
thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for listening. We're available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Okay, thank you so much for listening to my little voice. Oh my gosh, I'm getting flustered. I love you all so much. Bye.
We have trailers to watch. Bye.
Bye.